everyone. So this project is going to be about refinishing or painting your intercoolers on an XJR. This will work for other aluminum surfaces like intake manifolds, things like that, but my specific application is for my 2000 XJR. So what's happened basically is during the cleaning, I was cleaning up the inside of the intercoolers, the actual radiator itself, which had some notable oil and buildup and things like that. I was using a parts cleaner. It was actually quite effective at cleaning out the radiators, which I think would be good for performance. But honestly, I made a bit of a mistake and learned something along the way. And the issue is that the parts cleaner, in combination with the oil, I guess when it gets on the outer surface, it has the ability to kind of flash off, and it sort of bonds the oily residue with the painted finish on these. So what I ran into was basically I tried to use detergent, I tried to use more brake cleaner, rag, things like that to get it off, and it was pretty thoroughly on there. So I started moving to mild abrasive, things like that, and it just basically wasn't working. And then as I started to step up the intensity of it, I moved on to stronger and stronger abrasives, and as you can see, eventually started to mar the surface here. And the problem I'm running into is basically I was not okay having big black stains all over these things, but I'm also not okay having swirl marks and stuff like that on them. So I am now faced with refinishing these, but ideally I'm looking for a relatively stock look. So I looked at a couple different routes. From what I found, there's a few major avenues you can go down. I'm a little bit on a time crunch, so the direction I'm going to be taking is using just basic painting, which is, I believe, how they were treated from the factory. The other two methods are powder coating and and polishing. Polishing looks fantastic, but is incredibly time-consuming and labor-intensive. Or you can have a company do it, and it's probably relatively expensive to have that done. Powder coating is an excellent option. The only reason I'm not going that direction is time. I'm on a bit of a time crunch to get this thing back together, and genuinely, I don't think any of the local powder coating companies would be able to turn it in a matter of days versus a week or so. So really, what that leaves me is with just doing the best job I can painting it over the course of the next couple days here. Thankfully, there's some good products that you can get at your local stores, and they should be in ready supply. So let me show you what I'm working with here. Essentially, we're going to be doing this in your most usual three stages. You've got a primer, you got your actual color, and then I have a clear coat as well. Basically, the key thing to remember is that you're working with intercoolers. These get quite hot, obviously. These are the things that take the heat out of the charged air. I don't know the exact temperature these get to, but I'm guessing it's at or above operating temperature of the engine, which should be in the 200 and something range. The problem I kept running into is that your common spray paints will not technically work at that range. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean they're immediately going to flake off. In fact, they may actually work just fine, but all of the cans said this is good for up to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. My concern was that I have a feeling that these are going to be operating at 225, 250, something like that, and I just didn't want to go through all the effort while these are off the car and then find out that, the paint fails and does not hold. So, that said, I have found that basically Duplicolor makes several engine products that are rated for up to 500 degrees Fahrenheit, which I'm pretty sure that these won't exceed that. And then for the clear, I found this VHT, which, really, I didn't need the 2,000 degree upper range. I think this is for use on like headers and stuff like that. But what I did like was that it was a satin finish. I'm not looking for a gloss on these because as you can see, the stock finish has this somewhat satin look to it. So even before I messed mine up, they had these little nicks and dings and things like that, which, they didn't bother me that much. But now that I've gone and jacked these up, it's time for an upgrade. We're doing such a nice job on the engine bay anyway that we may as well not let the most visible parts of it let it down. So, that being said, there's going to be a few stages to this. Basically, phase one is going to be prepping the parts. You're going to want to kind of rough up the surface to allow it to hold the paint you're going to actually start before that. You're going to want to mask off and seal up any openings, any of the mating surfaces you want to make sure are protected and things like that. Then rough up the surfaces to make them accept paint. You're going to want to degrease the whole thing, and then it'll be prime, paint, and clear. That being said, I will show you what we're going with, and basically walk you through step by step of how I go through this. The color I chose, I actually haven't seen a name on these cans just yet, but I think it was something like iron or something like that. I think it was cast iron or something along those lines. As you can see, though, it's actually a remarkably good match for this. I would say ever so slightly cooler of a gray, but it seems to have the metallic, seems to have a satin finish, which I like. And, you know, again, this was available at my local Advance Auto Parts. And it, you know, they have a very limited selection of paints, honestly, so I was blown away when I walked in and saw this color, and it seemed to be perfect for the job. So, anyway, I'm going to get on to the first step. I have some teeny tiny little wire wheels that I'm going to be using. In the letters here, you can probably see, like in the E here, for instance, there's just a little bit of like dirt and grime and things like that. So I'm going to use a little wire wheel and try and get in between each of these spaces and knock out any of that debris. I'll be using just like a little bit of parts cleaner and stuff like that to wash that away as well, with the goal of basically making sure that the paint, when it lays down, sticks in every nook and cranny, and I don't have issues with it flaking off later because it didn't adhere properly because of some grease or residue that I couldn't remove. After that, I'll be going over the whole thing and roughing the surface. I don't plan on removing all the paint or anything like that because I'm not having any issues with it flaking or anything. So I just need to make it rough enough for the paint to kind of bite into. And then we're on to painting. And literally, I'm going to follow the instructions on these cans. I'll probably go relatively light on the primer, just enough to get a thin but uniform coat. And then we'll move on to a decent color coat. I've learned from painting in the past that it's easy to think you're done, and then when you look at it from certain angles, it's not quite covered. And then afterwards, we're going to give it a good coating of the clear, which is important mostly for protecting the surface. If you get oil and things like that on it, if you just leave the paint, there's a good chance that this is going to happen. You know, again, this was the thing I ran into in the first place. It just isn't protected in any way, shape, or form. And realistically, if these had some sort of clear coat or sealant on them, you could probably just wipe them down, or at least just use a mild detergent to lift whatever off. So that being said, I'm going to get into the actual work here, and first thing I'm going to do is test out the little wire wheels, and I guess we'll go from there. So, normally I would use a Dremel for work like this, but mine was out on loan. So if you don't have a Dremel, actually a basic power drill is just fine. A little bit bigger, and it obviously is a little bit different in how it acts, but honestly, slow and steady, it was just fine. Basically, I started trying to just spot clean the areas that I could see, and then I realized there was probably still debris and things like that that were really fine. So I ended up just tracing every single letter. As you can see in some of the tighter areas, it went through right to the aluminum. This is no big deal because we're going to be repainting it with primer and everything like that. But basically, it looks like we did a pretty good job outside. You know, you can see a shadow cast on there, but the actual grease and all of that is now gone. So now, obviously I have to repeat that on this part, the other intercooler here, and also I'm going to just go around the V8 logo here as well, and into some of these nooks and crannies on the little bonnet piece here. I apologize if I'm rambling, by the way. It's a little bit late, and I'm just trying to make sure I don't lose time on this, so it's not quite as eloquent as some of our other videos. But that said, I at least wanted to film this so it wasn't just like, hey, surprise, they're painted. So anyway, now that I've confirmed this, I'm going to move on to scuffing the rest of this surface, and then repeating that on the other two parts, and hopefully we'll get on to priming these tomorrow. So we'll do a little bit more filming here in just a little bit of the next steps, and we'll run you through anything that pops up, if there's anything other than the obvious, and we will proceed on from there. Alright, so I just finished painting the color coat on this part. As you saw, I laid the primer down relatively quickly, honestly, because we're working with a textured surface here that has the kind of natural, like, hammered finish. You don't have to aim for perfect smoothness. There's no sanding, stuff like that. With the color coat, you definitely want to lay it down a little bit thinner and a little bit slower. And, you know, this is still pretty glossy at the moment because it's very, very wet. As you can see, rather than trying to flip it and paint one side then the other, because I am on a bit of a timetable, as the last part that I was waiting on did show up, so you know, I wanted to kind of get a move on with this. So I decided to elevate the part onto this piece of wood, which would allow me access to paint the underside, which literally you can't even see, but you know, just to do a good job. So I've painted it. It may not be quite as pretty as the top here, but I made sure that all of the surfaces were covered. And as you can see, this color is actually extremely pretty. So I'm quite a fan with the way this turned out. The reason I started with this piece is, I guess, I'm curious to see what it looks like next to one of the original pieces. I want to kind of compare it to the original drab gray color. I'm gonna guess it's probably not perfect, but I bet you it is very, very close, and I'm excited to see what this looks like once it's dry and out in the sunlight. So for the time being, I'm gonna get this back in the workshop and set it down to let it dry fully overnight. Yeah, I'm going to reread this and make sure I'm understanding it correctly, because obviously I don't want to apply the clear coat too soon, but I also don't want to apply it too late. So I'll check that, and if we're doing clear coat, we're doing it now. Then I guess we're doing it now. If not, then I'll do it tomorrow when I have a little more time. But again, extremely happy with the way this turned out. I think this color is fantastic, and I think it's going to really pop on that nice, clean, natural aluminum on top of the supercharger. So anyway, I'm going to keep this rolling along and get this tucked away. And we're going to finish that probably for the night, and then we'll work on priming the intercoolers themselves tomorrow. So, as everyone says, 90% of the paint finish that you get is actually all in the prep work. So basically, you know, one of the things that made painting this significantly easier, or at least the first piece, was just doing a good and thorough job of masking. That way, when it comes to laying down the actual paint itself, you know, you don't have to really worry about, like, you know, getting overspray on things that shouldn't. You know, the piece is sealed. You know, all your mating surfaces are already clean. Once that's done, then it would be degreasing the surface and any other prep that needs to happen. But I'm going to show you me masking this piece off, and you'll see what I basically do is just lay the tape down over any holes that I don't want paint getting in, and then I come back with a razor and just kind of trim it back to follow the contours and really just cover these mating surfaces. Everything else I want to get paint on, so you know, it makes sense just to leave all of that exposed. So I'm going to go through and do that real quick, and once that is done, we'll have I've already done the other one, so we'll have both parts ready to get their primer. So, as you saw, I've now done the rough masking on everything. I did go through and wipe down all of the surfaces that I was masking with brake cleaner, just to make sure there's no oily residue that would stop the tape from sticking. That's a useful step. But now we're going to get into trimming with a razor. So basically, I just use a standard razor blade like this one. Notable, I guess, would be the angle that you hold the blade at when you're cutting a surface. Let me see if I can show you even. You kind of want to hold the blade not like square on or inward like this, because you're more likely to score or damage the surface, but I actually hold it away from the angle, and sometimes it helps to start towards the center of the tape. So, and actually another step helps pushing the tape down to get a real firm adhesion right at the edge. And again, careful not to jab yourself, but starting in the middle and then kind of working your way along and gently cutting like so. And that'll give you a pretty clean well-sealed edge without marring the paint surface on the other side. So I'm going to get through all of this, and once this is masked, I'm going to put it out in the sun for it to warm up for a minute, because it's a bit chilly in here. Once it's warmed up, degrease it, and we'll get into priming. So I found a couple little spots that I missed with the wire wheel. This little nook right here, and in these little end caps here. I did get them on this one and just managed to miss it on this one. So I'm not going to make you watch me degrease the rest of these, but basically I'm going to zip those last little parts, thoroughly go over the whole thing with parts cleaner. I did end up removing the stickers from the underside here just because they're going to get destroyed or painted over anyway. But that being said, once these things are degreased, then they're ready for primer. As you can see, I've hung the parts in here, and that's going to let me get to all sides of them at once. I've ended up hanging them from this eyelet right here. There's going to be a tiny area where I won't be able to get paint because the wire's in the way. This one, it appears to be actually covered by the head of a bolt because it's a flange all the way to the edge. So I think that's actually a perfect spot because there will be a bolt head covering that tiny little stripe right there where there's no paint. So I think it'll be okay. If I start to get into it and I get worried, you can always put something in to spread the wire that's holding it and make it come in at more of a straight angle. But again, for this, I don't think we're going to need to do that. So I'm going to finish degreasing these, and then next time you see me, hopefully I'll be working on primer. Okay, so here's a quick look after the color coat. This is going to look a little glossy right now in comparison to how it'll look when it dries. It'll have a little more of a satin finish. Basically, as you saw, you just do kind of thin uniform coats. Usually when I'm painting a relatively complex surface like this, because it's going to take me time to work around all of the contours and everything like that, I actually end up kind of not leaving time between the coats. I usually actually just kind of spend my time methodically working my way around each area of the piece, and then basically, you know, once I've done kind of like the initial go around, then afterwards I can kind of start back where I was, and usually that gets about the timing that you need. So again, hanging the piece lets me get all of the angles and everything. As you probably saw, I had to kind of crouch and, you know, look up underneath and all that stuff. So, you know, maybe hanging them a little higher, but then obviously not too high so you can reach the other end. But that being said, I am extremely pleased with how these have come out. I mean, to me, again, this color is super close to the factory color. and that paint laid down really nice. So compared to the mess that I had before, these actually look super good. They're gonna look brand new on there. I have actually decided to skip the clear coat step. Honestly, rereading this, because it is a proper engine enamel, I think I can actually get away without it. And honestly, the main reason being, technically you're supposed to lay a clear coat like that down within about half an hour of laying down the color coat, and I kind of made that mistake when I did this on the hat for the blower. I let it dry fully, and you know, theoretically, don't get me wrong, you can lay clear coat after that. You just have to do a bit more prep and stuff like that. But then I was concerned about consistency between the three parts and so on and so forth. So that being said, these turned out fantastic, and because they're right on the top of the engine, I genuinely don't think I'm going to have any issues with the surface holding up or them getting super dirty or anything like that. So that said, now these are ready to go on the car. After a cure time, I'm going to let them dry overnight. I will untape all of them, and I'll get you a clip as well so you can see all three parts in the blower all together. And then if you want to see them going back on the car, got a whole nother video on my heater hose and massive other cooling hose service, which this is a part of. And yeah, basically check it out, and you'll see them go back on the car in all their new freshly painted glory. And again, you can use this method on pretty much any aluminum part. So, you know, or honestly any metal part really, it's pretty universal. But if you have like an intake manifold or something like that, this will work just fine. And I guess, you know, if this was useful for you, I would love to see a video or some photos or something like that. So please do like and subscribe so you can see the next steps on this project and much more. And then on top of that also, you know, reach out to us on Instagram and on Facebook. You know, we're trying to be as active as we can. So, you know, please do just follow us on whatever social platform works best for you. But as far as the video content, YouTube is the place to be. So really appreciate it, and we'll catch you on the next one.